Chrissy, you should be back in bed.
Why? I have to get dressed so I'll be ready to leave.
Leave? You can't leave, Chrissy. You're supposed to be carried.
Today, no TV executive would sign off on a show like Three's Company. That's probably why it's better that the show had its years in the sun before this modern era. However, despite being loved by so many and being a part of the quintessential 70s television, Three's Company ended prematurely, or at least, that's what the majority of the fans of the show think. There's been a lot of talk and gossip about the real reason Three's Company ended, especially because the show ended just 3 seasons after the showrunners fired one of the main characters, Suzanne Sommers. So, what happened? Why did Three's Company come to an end? Did it have something to do with the gender inequality allegations that Suzanne Summers leveled at the show? Or was it something else entirely? To understand why Three's Company ended the way it did, it's important to look at the show itself and how it was set up. Three's Company came on television in the late 70s at a time when sitcoms were thriving and still managing to dominate the market. However, Three's Company wasn't a proper primetime show when it first aired. Instead, it was a mid-season show, and many didn't expect mid-season shows to be renewed after the original 6-episode run. But Three's Company changed the mind of everyone when it raked in record-high ratings and became the highest-rated mid-season show ever broadcast on network television. The success of the show was so extraordinary that ABC, the network that hosted the show, had no problems with renewing it and giving it a permanent primetime spot during the 1977-78 television season. So, right off the bat, Three's Company wasn't meant to be a primetime TV show, but its immense success meant that the ABC network had no choice but to promote the show and give it a primetime spot. As the years went by, Three's Company grew more and more popular, and with that popularity came stardom for the show's 3 stars: Joyce Dewitt, Suzanne Summers, and John Ritter, who played Joyce, Chrissy, and Jack on the show, respectively. There are a lot of reasons analysts believe the show got as popular as it was in its very first season. But the one reason that all of them agree with is that Three's Company introduced something new to the world of television. The show titillated viewers with adult stuff that people hadn't really seen on TV. Of course, all these things are normal with regular TV shows today, but they certainly weren't in the 70s. While many movies had managed to break the gag concerning adult content, Three's Company was one of the very first, or the very first to attempt to break these gags on television, and it did it while on television and showing on the primetime slot. Thankfully, a lot of the jokes kept the audience spellbound and made them love the show. It was different, funny, and just the right amount of obscene. As the show advanced and John Ritter got into his elements, the show became a comedy of misunderstanding that gave people the chance to laugh at things that were otherwise taboo to talk about on television. Of course, right now, the show's premise would be kind of outdated, and maybe the jokes would be too. But in the 70s, it was somewhat like a pop culture phenomenon. As the show grew popular and the stars started experiencing unprecedented fame, things started to get a little bit complicated. For John Ritter, the fact that he was now an exceedingly famous actor was something that he took in his stride. And why wouldn't he? His father had been a huge TV star too, and he'd worked all his life in Hollywood waiting for his huge break. In fact, before the show, he was the actor with the biggest name on the cast. He'd already acted in several movies and was on the come-up. Three's Company didn't make him famous, it just accelerated his career trajectory. Perhaps that's why it was easier for him to take things in a stride. Joyce Dewitt, the actress that played Janet on the show, was quite unlike a lot of actresses since she didn't care about fame. As one person knowledgeable about her role in the show put it, she cared more about acting than she did about being popular. She was not ready for the fame that the show gave her, and she tried to pull back from public attention whenever she could. She'd been classically trained as a theater actress, so she was certainly not ready for the politics, glitz, and glamour that came with being a world-famous Hollywood actress. Suzanne Summers, the actress who played Chrissy on the other hand, was quite ready for the fame of Hollywood. It was almost like she'd been waiting all her life for it, and could not quite believe it when it eventually fell into her lap. Summers approached her character Chrissy as a business and her ticket to fame. That means she gave as many interviews as she could, went to as many functions as she could, and did everything to stay in front of the camera. In fact, at one point she advised the showrunners to treat show business as a business and create merch for the characters on the show and make money off of them. Of course, the showrunners ignored her since they only really cared about the story and not about making a business out of the show. Ordinarily, Summers' behavior would have been normal as it only served to boost the show's popularity. However, it soon became an issue because according to the showrunners and the plan they had for the show, John Ritter was the star, and Summers and Dewitt were merely supporting characters. Three's Company was always going to be about a guy and then two girls, not two girls and a guy. Unfortunately, Summers had worked very hard to build a different reputation in the media. So the media narrative was that she was the star of the show, or that all three characters on the show had equal standing in the eyes of the showrunners, which was not true. After a while, it seemed that even Summers began to believe the media narrative too, and that showed when her contract with ABC was about to be renewed. Before the renewal negotiations, she was getting paid around $30,000 per episode of the show. When ABC approached her for a contract renewal, she was offered a $5,000 increase. She refused that offer and instead asked for $150,000 per episode, which was what John Ritter was getting. She argued that she was worth that much because her co-star was also getting paid that much. But according to ABC, Summers was hardly a co-star. She was merely a supporting character. And importantly perhaps, she wasn't indispensable to the show. She could be easily replaced. But John Ritter, on the other hand, was irreplaceable. So ABC decided to deny her request. Summers didn't take this new development lightly and promptly sued the network. While she did this, her connection to the other members of the cast pretty much went up in flames. That was because Summers had gone to the press during her negotiations with ABC and had revealed the salaries of her co-stars. She then started insinuating that the only reason John Ritter earned more than her was that he was male, and if she was John Summers instead of Suzanne Summers, she would also be able to earn as much as he did. Of course, that didn't go over well with John Ritter, who pretty much decided that he would stop working with her. Once ABC decided that it would not renew Summers' contract, it set about finding a replacement for her. However, as the showrunners quickly found out, no one could replace Suzanne Summers as Chrissy. Three's Company replaced Chrissy twice, and both times the actresses they hired struggled to convince. At a point, the network decided that it would be better to treat the third roommate spot as a more supporting role, and attention moved to John and Joyce as the two primary characters. The show bumbled on for about 3 more seasons before it eventually canceled due to plummeting ratings. The cancellation, of course, came as a shock to many people because John Ritter won an Emmy and a Golden Globe for his work on the show for that season, and the show won a People's Choice Award for that season as well. According to insiders in the industry, the show's falling ratings was not because of the departure of Suzanne Summers, even though the show had not adequately replaced her. Instead, it was because there was now a lot of repetition of the storylines on the show. The show was also canceled in part because the showrunners didn't want to overstay their welcome. They felt like they'd had a good run, and it would be awful to wait until the ratings could no longer justify the existence of the show before stopping it. Of course, you could make the argument that if Suzanne Summers had continued on the show, her boisterous character might have kept the show alive, but that would be an incredible assumption to make. Or would it? The evidence certainly doesn't support that claim. Sure, Chrissy was a powerful character played by Suzanne, but a lot of people regard the 6th season of the show as one of its best, and it was the one immediately after she'd left. So maybe the show didn't end because of Suzanne Summers. Maybe it ended because that's what shows do when they run out of stories to tell.